What is going on? Episode 26 of VYPE, Walker Talk Live. It's our Friday Pick'em show. And I'm a little sad today, Scott. As you may well be aware, my Cowboys come up a little bit short last night against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Man, I tell you, me and my friend were watching that game, Scott, and as soon as the Cowboys got that field goal to go ahead, as soon as they got that field goal, I was like, this game's over. And not because the Cowboys were going to win, but because they left Tom Brady over a minute. And I just could not believe. We all knew it was going to happen. He's been playing for 22 years now. At this point, if you don't know what's going to happen when you give Tom Brady over a minute to go with only needing a field goal to win, like, you must be new to the game of football. I was absolutely devastated. Scotty, did you see that game or read about it or anything like that?
Yeah, man. So I am not in the office right now. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's a ton of fun. But yes, we did watch the game. I'm in Scottsdale right now for a weekend trip. But it's still Friday Night Lights, so that's why we're here bringing you the Pick'em Challenge, our proud thoughts and predictions. And yes, I did watch the game. Heartbreaking loss. So I feel for you, man. I was thinking about you.
I appreciate that. I will say, Dak Prescott showed up and showed out. He looked absolutely amazing last night. And I know it's only one game, and yes, they're the defending state champs, and so there's that little bit of optimism there when you're thinking about, okay, they returned all 22 starters on both sides of the ball, and Dak Prescott, after not playing for, the better part of 11 months, just he balled out, looked great. I mean, basically picked up where he left off last year as far as throwing goes, and looked better than last year. I mean, he was basically playing from behind last year in those first three games. And this game, he was going really toe-to-toe. He wasn't trying to come back from a double-digit deficit. So really impressed, I will say, for with Dak. But yeah, definitely a heartbreak in the end there, Scott.
I mean, is that just Cowboys fans? I know Stephen A. Smith on ESPN he's hard on the Cowboys, sometimes justifiably so, sometimes a little too harsh in my opinion. But man, it was tough. I thought early on Dak overall he looked great, but man, he threw the ball 60 times. That's a lot, especially coming off a shoulder surgery. But NFL is back. First game, it delivered the hype. It lived up to it. It was a ton of fun. Football's back. high school football is back. College football is back. We are in full force, man. And, yeah, I feel for the Cowboys. Tough way to start the season. But there are also a lot of positives to take away for them.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to be throwing it, 58 times a game every week. I think that one was just more of just a praise, if you will, on that Tampa Bay front seven and just how, especially the front line, just how stout they are and how good they are, that they knew they wouldn't be able to run on them most of the night. And so because of that, they had to rely on Dak, and he almost got the job done. Again, I think there were a couple of plays on that last drive where there was a big catch by CeeDee Lamb where he could have stayed in bounds and took off some time. There was like a 1st and 10 where they were in field goal range already, where they could have run the ball, to take off some time or force Tampa to use a timeout, but instead they threw an incomplete pass. So there was some stuff there. But all in all, yes, I'm upset that the Cowboys won, but I thought it was going to be worse than it was going into that game. So we'll move on from that. Of course, we are a high school sports show, but we have to talk our pros and our college. Heck, you know what? Let's talk college. Big 12 is now 12 teams again. I don't know if you saw that news, Scott. Big 12 is now 12 teams again. It's what, Houston, BYU. Who do you know the two other teams? Is it UCF and who's the other one? I don't know the other one. Do you know those teams, Scott?
Cincinnati.
That's the one.
UCF, Cincinnati, U of H, and BYU. I think it's the only move the Big 12 could do right now with Texas and OU leaving the conference. It was tough. I think those are the best schools available if you were going to bring in schools at all. You can't necessarily replace UT or Oklahoma, but I think it was best case scenario for the Big 12, and it gives some viability and hopefully some longevity and most importantly stability for the Big 12 for a conference that really hasn't had much stability ever since Nebraska and Colorado left, and then especially once Texas A&M and Missouri left.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. They're not going to be the big. Well, they were the Big 10 after the last few years, even though they're still Big 12. It's not going to be at that. I mean, losing Texas and Oklahoma is massive, but I think adding the 4 teams will help them stay afloat and be considered a Power 5, if you will. With that being said, now let's jump in to our high school segment, where our Friday show is where we look through at least 6 games, maybe more, depending on our mood, and we pick them, see who we think is going to win. A lot of these games we previewed yesterday on our show yesterday, so if you want to hear more about that, see what, we had Matt, Josh, and Shayna on, so if you want to hear their thoughts on those games, definitely go check those out. Check out that show to see their thoughts. We're going to give our thoughts on these games and pick them. Let's start off in the Houston area. We have Crosby versus Port Arthur Memorial. Port Arthur Memorial has started off on fire, Scott. Really, really impressive. Their quarterback, Jamar Sanders, last week had over 600 yards of total offense and 6 TDs in their win versus Barbers Hill. Crosby off to 0-2 start. Now, to their credit, I don't think you want to say credit, but I don't want to say it's a bad 0-2 start. I mean, they played Carthage in week 1. They played Manville in week 2. So it's not like the teams they are playing and they lost to are pushovers by any means. So I'm not gonna say it's panic time for Crosby, but they're going up against a really dominant offense in Port Arthur Memorial. Scott, does Crosby go 0-3, or they finally get that win?
Yeah, I thought you said it pretty well in that Crosby 0-2, but if there's such a thing, it's not a bad 0-2. Losing to Carthage and Manville, some of the top teams in the state, like some of those teams, when those 2 teams can go toe-to-toe with almost anybody in the state at any classification. So, but and you played him close, you played him tight. You can argue Crosby should have beaten Carthage. So it's a tough 0-2 start, but it's a decent 0-2 start. There's a lot of good takeaways for them. For this one, though, I'm going with, and this one's tough. I'm going to go with Crosby. PA Memorial off to a really good start as well. Like you said, on fire. I think Crosby's turning it around. I think they're going to put everything together, play a complete 60 minutes. Or is it 60 minutes? I forget how long the quarters are. But they're going to play a full, complete game, 4 quarters, and get the win over Port Arthur Memorial and get the season back on track.
Yeah, and like we always mention, especially at the high school level, I mean, non-district losses aren't detrimental, right? If you lose a game in college, it's pretty much over. You're not playing for the national championship. if you lose if you lose in NFL, if you lose, when you're not playing in your conference, that could be detrimental because it could affect your playoff seeding and stuff like that. So, at the high school level, it's not as detrimental because only wins that matter as far as getting the playoffs are district wins. So playing tougher competition is always a good thing. With that being said, I am going to pick Port Arthur Memorial in this one. Jamar Sanders has just been phenomenal to start the year, and I don't see him slowing down against Crosby. I do think Crosby will go 0-3. I don't think that's going to be a bad sign for them going into the season. Our next game on the docket is Frisco Lone Star versus Frisco Heritage. This is a game where Frisco Lone Star seems to be the favorites in this one. They're one of those kind of Texas powers that can kind of get there kind of year in and year out. So I'm going to say I'll say my pick right now. I do suspect, I am picking Frisco Lone Star to win this one. But what say you, Scott? Does Frisco Heritage stand a chance?
Yeah, this might be a game that I'm least familiar with, to be honest. I know Frisco Lone Star traditionally has had a very good program. So for those reasons, I'm going Frisco Lone Star.
Sometimes it's as easy as that, Scott. Sometimes it's as easy as that. Next one, we have Lake Travis versus Rockwall. Lake Travis, you talk about, Crosby kind of scheduling some tougher opponents to start the year. But Lake Travis has really had a non-district schedule that is very difficult and can set them up on a good run as we head towards district and the playoffs. Last week they had Judson, the week before Arlington Martin. So just a really stacked non-district schedule for Lake Travis, and they've looked all the part. We talked about last year them getting bounced in the first round and how much of an upset that was, and you see them come out so far this year and play the way they have. And you look at some of the stats last week, for instance, Lake Travis against their win in Judson, only 257 yards, and you think, well, that's not a lot of offense. But then they had caused 4 turnovers. Their defense caused four turnovers, and then you're like, okay, well, that makes sense. While they didn't have so many offense, they had shorter fields to work with. So, absolutely dominant performance last week against Judson, and I don't think this one will be as dominant performance because I think Rockwall is right there. Rockwall is averaging, Scott, 58 points a game. They put up 70 last week against Dallas Jesuit, but I don't think that's going to happen this week. I think there will be Lake Travis's offense versus or Lake Travis's defense versus Rockwall's offense that will kind of be the deciding factor. I think Lake Travis's defense will step up compared to the last 2 opponents for Rockwall. I do think Lake Travis will get this one. What say you, Scott?
So I'm here in Scottsdale, as I mentioned at the top of the show. And one of the buddies that I'm here with, he follows high school sports pretty closely. And I was showing him our top 10 rankings in DFW. And he was like, you don't have any of the Rockwall schools on there. Rockwall. He was like, don't sleep on them. Those are some really good teams. So they've kind of caught my attention. 70 points last week. I don't care what level, what classification, college, pro, high school, 70 points. That is awesome. It's very impressive. That being said, though, I'm going Lake Travis. I'm not sleeping on your Rockwall, but Lake Travis has impressed to start the season, beating some really good teams in Judson and Arlington Martin. I think the Lake Travis team keeps it rolling, and they come out with a victory over Rockwall.
Yeah, I think both of us agree that this game will be pretty close, but I think so far this year, Lake Travis has just looked really, really good. So, yeah, I no knock on Rockwall. I agree with you there. Next game, moving back to the Houston area, North Shore versus Westfield. North Shore, we know that their defense has kind of been their offense, if you will, this year. And not to say their offense hasn't been bad, but hasn't been good as the years past. And then you have Westfield also coming in undefeated. Scott, does North Shore continue their reign, or does Westfield get the upset?
So if you go back and listen to the VYPE podcast, which came out on Wednesday, Will Turboff and company are doing an amazing job. They had A.J. Holmes, the tackle out of Westfield this last year, is committed to UVA, if I'm not mistaken. And it was a very good interview. And he was just talking about how this team is different than they have been last year. Westfield's one of those teams always coming out of Region 2 from the Houston area, as a handful of schools do. They've made some really good runs. One of the better programs, I would say, year in and year out in the Houston area. and they're led by Cardell Williams, the quarterback. They're gelling really well this year. That being said, North Shore is North Shore. Westfield's one of the better programs year in and year out, but North Shore and I would say Katy are the programs year in and year out. So North Shore still got some things to figure out on the offensive side of the ball. I think that defense is just so stout. This is going to be a defensive matchup. I think Carter Williams is going to put up points because he is a dynamic, electric quarterback. But I'm going with the Mustangs of North Shore.
You know, that's not a bad pick, and I mean, you can never go wrong picking North Shore. And you know, I've been pretty conservative on my picks. You know, usually picking the kind of the favorite, if you will, or I mean, even if you look at our Austin and San Antonio picks, I think B&U, those come out later today, 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock respectively. Pretty conservative for the most part. You did pick some your first week. You kind of made some little upset picks, and then you bounced back last week with a nice.
It didn't work out for me.
Last week it did though. You got that 4-1 record to kind of build you back up. So I'm gonna go Westfield in this one. I'm gonna go for a little bit of an upset here. I think it's good to try and spice things up sometimes. So I think Westfield gets the win here in a very close game. I think, like I said, it's going to come down to the defenses on this one. And I
don't hate it.
Hey, you know, it is North Shore, but there's times where you gotta go for some gusto here. So I'm going North Shore in this one.
I like it, man. I like it. Like I said, there's been some good matchups to start the year. Last week that comes to mind, at least in the Houston area, Ridge Point and Dickinson turned out to be a really good game. This is one of those it's going to be tested, and it's going to be a good matchup across the board. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, me too. Let's move back to the Dallas area for this one. We got South Lake Carroll versus Prosper. Another case.
South Lake.
Oh, you're not going to even talk. You're just going to go South Lake, huh? All right, let me put it on you there.
Well, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off here. I'll let you do your breakdown. I mean, South Lake Carroll, right? I mean, they put a beating on HP in week 1, come out with a victory in week 2. So I'm going with the Carroll Dragons. They're number 1 team in the Metroplex for a reason in our rankings, so I'm going South Lake. All right, give us your breakdown. Sorry to cut you off.
Well, look, here's the thing. It's going to come down to their quarterbacks, right? Both have quarterbacks are going on to their third start. I think, Prosper's quarterback Harrison Rosar, he's going to face South Lake Carroll. It's going to be a challenge that he hasn't faced so far in his first 2 games. South Lake Carroll, you know, they did get a little bit of a scare last week against Rockwall Heath. They had to make a furious comeback to win that game. And I think that actually could be the difference in the game. So, you know, so far this year, Rosar hasn't faced a challenge, but just last week, Caden Anderson had to face that challenge of coming back and being a very good Rockwall Heath team. And, week 1, pretty easy win against Highland Park. Week 2 had a comeback. So, it's not only good for Caden Anderson, but that's good for just South Lake in general to be able to face that adversity and come back and win. So with that being said, because of the adversity they faced last week, I think that's going to help South Lake Carroll. And I am also going to pick South Lake Carroll, but it's only because of that adversity they faced. I think that's going to be good for them as they progress into the season, especially with, a first-year quarterback. Moving on to our final game. This is a Austin game. It is Vandergriff versus San Angelo Central. So I guess not technically just an Austin game, but an Austin and West Texas game if you think about it. So Vandergriff and San Angelo Central playing. I think is this our first time playing each other? Let me see. I have some notes here. Don't have it on my notes.
That doesn't feel like a matchup that we usually see.
Yes, yeah, I do believe it might be their first matchup, but I can't. I thought I had written it down, but I guess not. Each team coming in at 2-0. Vandergriff, of course, beating Cedar Park, and then they won again last week. Who did they play? Can't remember who they played last week, but I know it was a pretty easy victory for them, if that makes sense. That's how maybe not necessarily know the opponent.
Right.
Having to make that long trek, that's not going to be easy for Vandergrift. I mean, anytime you have to, as a football squad, you have to make that long trek sitting on those buses, even though they're air conditioned, it can take a little bit out of you. But I mean, San Angelo is something they're used to. Just last week they traveled 400 miles for their game last week, and they came out victorious. So it's going to really be a tale of really 2 quarterbacks. You have Vandergrift, who's more of a passing quarterback style, where San Angelo Central, they're more of a dual threat. Their quarterback Tyler Hill. He had 221 yards rushing, 149 yards passing, so very balanced there. So it's really going to be, can Vandergriff stop the quarterback, really guessing right. Is it going to be run? Is it going to be pass? I think that's going to really be the difference in the game. Before I make my pick, who do you have, Scott?
Yeah, Vandergriff beating Cedar Park, you said, week 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cedar Park obviously making it to the state championship last year. It's kind of hard to gauge, though, and that's especially once week 3 comes around. We really can kind of get a gauge and a feel for some teams beating based off who they're playing, the scores, everything in between. I'm going with the home team, though. San Angelo Central comes away, starts the season 3-0, as I mentioned, very balanced attack. There's something to it, though, and some of these hill country schools, they do have to travel a little bit more than, let's say, the Metroplex or the Houston area team. So maybe Vandergriff is used to being on the road a little bit more, but there's a lot of external factors that can come into play here. So for those reasons, I'm going with San Angelo Central moving and continuing the season undefeated.
This one's tough for me. I went back and forth on this one simply because of that. I mean, you have to do the travel, but I really like so far this season. I've really liked Vandergriff's defense. And that's really, like I said just a few minutes ago, that's really what it's going to come down to is, can Vandergriff's defense slow down the dual threat quarterback of San Angelo Central, quarterback Tyler Hill. And I mean, they've got running backs in the backfield as well. Darius Floyd and Samuel Navarrete, 103 and 91 yards respectively last week. So they're, like I said, they've got a stacked backfield on offense. I gotta stick with my home team. I gotta be a little bit of homer here. I gotta go Vandergriff. Just, I feel like their defense can be good enough to slow down San Angelo Central. That game will be on our VYPE Flow channel. So if people that don't know, we have a partnership with Flow Sports. So that game will be on Flow Sports tonight. Our broadcast director Merle Bertrand will be on the call. But yeah, I do feel like I'm going Vandergriff. So. Any last thoughts?
I wonder who Merle's picking.
What was that?
I wonder who Merle's picking. I mean, he's calling the call. It's like Curb Street asking. It's like asking Herbie for his pick on a game he's calling. But he is the voice of the Vipers. So
look, Scott.
That's why.
In in the state championship, Westlake versus South Lake Carroll, Merle's still picking Vandergriff. Okay, that's just what it is. He's always picking Vandergriff. So no, I can't. But no, he's obviously the voice of the Vipers. So yeah, he's probably definitely going to be. I think though, I'll give him Merle credit. He knows when to say. Now he may not say it on air, but and he hasn't told me this personally, so I'm not speaking for Merle or anything. But he will say he's not one of those where it's like, this team's going to win. He knows when teams he's calling games for, when they have weaknesses and stuff like that. But of course, voice of the Vipers, he's gonna always pick Vandergriff 100% of the time.
Yeah, we love you, Merle. We're just giving you a hard time.
Well, hey, that will do it for our show today. I know, Scott, you're in Arizona, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So with that being said, that will be our show. Any games you want to watch, head on over to VYPE.com. We and like I said, we are partnered with Flow, so definitely check out those games. Tomorrow, we'll release our VYPE Live Plays of the Week, so make sure to check those out and vote for those Monday through Wednesday. And then we will be back here Monday at noon to break down all DFW and Austin games from this past week. Until then, Scotty, give us a little peace out.
Everybody go follow us on our social media platforms. Huge games this weekend. Go check out all the live shows. Josh W's killing it so far. VYPE preview shows, breakdowns, ranking shows, you name it. We're doing it every day at 12 o'clock. We're coming to you live. Wac, thanks for heading that up. Crushing it so far. Everybody enjoy your weekend. Enjoy some games. We'll see you there.
Peace out, everyone.